So, kids, how are you liking downstairs church this morning?
Kind of sad.
It is. Downstairs church is kind of sad, isn't it?
I want to go into the church.
I know, we all want to go into church, but for now we can't. So, we're going to make the best of it, and we're going to do downstairs church. You get to do it with all your siblings.
Hello!
Oh yeah, you're watching as Mommy gets our Right Now media ready. So, we just sang the song, 12 men went to spy on Canaan. What's the rest? 10 were bad and 2 were good. What did they see when they spied on Canaan? 10 were bad and 2 were good. So what do you think we're going to talk about?
Michael!
Well, there's Michael. Yeah, he's coming up. We're going to talk about Canaan and wandering in the desert. And this is the book of Numbers.
And Deuteronomy?
Deuteronomy, that's the next book. So, Numbers, Deuteronomy. So we're going to talk about that. And then
Joshua.
next week's Joshua.
Oh.
So we're going to do Numbers and Deuteronomy. So we're going to learn all about Numbers and Deuteronomy.
We're going to be both?
Yeah, and we're going to learn 2 books in one day. It's a new record.
Ooh.
We're going to learn more about Moses and the Israelites as they're wandering in the desert. Yep, Moses, more about law. And we're going to learn about a mountain with an awesome name. We're also going to learn about riverboats.
I think I know.
Riverboats. So, you'll have to see how, you'll have to listen to the rest to figure out how riverboats fits into it. We got some good coloring. It's going to be fun this week. So, everybody in virtual Sunday school land, now is the time when you need to put on the appropriate episode. This is, session 3, episode... Volume 3, episode 2?
Volume 3, session 2.
Volume 3, session 2 of What's in the Bible with Buck Denver. So, kids, how was that?
Good.
Good?
Mm-hmm.
What did we learn? What was your favorite part?
The riverboat.
The riverboat. What did you learn about the riverboat? You don't know anything about riverboats?
They're really, really big.
Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about those at the end, okay?
Okay.
What's the 4th and 5th book of the Bible, kiddos?
Deuteronomy.
That's the 5th. What's the 4th book?
Joshua.
No, that's the 6th book. Numbers! That's right. Why is it called Numbers?
Because there was a whole bunch of numbers.
Because it involves counting?
Yeah.
Because it starts with the counting of the people.
So,
Yeah.
Deuteronomy.
So Moses sent 12 spies when men went to spy on Canaan. 10 were bad and 2 were good. What did they see when they spied on Canaan? 10 were bad and 2 were good. So Moses sent 12 spies in. How many thought it was a good idea to go conquer the promised land? Because God will help them.
They thought it was a bad idea.
How many thought it was a good idea?
2.
2. How many thought it was a bad idea?
10.
Okay, now this is a math question for all of you homeschoolers. I got to Claire's Home Education, so this is very hard for even Daddy. What's 10 plus 2?
10 plus 2? 12. 12.
It's 12. Wow, your Claire's Home Education's better than my Claire's Home Education. Okay. And how many tribes were there in Israel?
There were, I don't know. 26.
No. Half of 26 and a little bit. Less.
Hello, Daddy.
We're going to color later. Ellie, please put the colors down. We're talking right now. 12. There were 12 tribes. That's why there was 12 spies. So they came back.
Tribes are spies?
Yeah. They sent 1 spy from every tribe.
Oh.
So they sent the spies. 2 said, let's go get it. God will help us. And the other 10 said what?
No,
They're so big. They're so strong. They're so scary. They got a town with walls 24 feet thick. How thick is 24 feet?
Thick.
Well, you see this room we're in right now?
Yeah.
It's not quite 24 feet wide. It's about 20 feet wide. So it's wider than this kitchen. And it was probably, if it was that wide, it was probably taller than this too.
It would be, so all of that would be filled in.
So how hard would it be to dig through that wall?
Very, very hard.
Yeah, so, and then if you're standing on the wall, people would be throwing rocks and shooting arrows at you too. So it wasn't easy.
I remember that saw the picture of that in Ellie's Bible. They use shields.
We're going to talk about this next week. Oh, Hannah. Everybody in... Ellie, please don't bang, kids. When you bang, everybody in town hears. Okay, sorry about that, virtual Sunday school people. This is how real Sunday school goes sometimes. So they said we're not going to invade. They didn't trust God. So what happened? They got a 40-year...
Time out.
How long was your timeouts this week, guys?
Only 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, 5 or 10 minutes.
Mine was 6 minutes.
Maybe
if I yelled at Mom.
Yeah, maybe they added up to 40 minutes this week. Maybe. But imagine 40 years. How long is 40 years?
Oh, you would be dead by then. If you're an adult, you would be dead.
Yeah, and then your kids would go. So I'm not even 40 yet.
But they stay alive. They lived for a very long
in
time.
Genesis they could live for a very long time. But these guys, they lived probably even a little shorter than we do now. So they all died, and then their kids got to go to the promised land.
Lucky kids. And not so lucky.
God promised he would give the people the promised land.
The cow?
Even if it meant knocking down walls. So you had a 40-year timeout, right, Daniel? Oh, you're just nodding. Daniel's our quiet kid for those in virtual Sunday school land. He doesn't talk on a good day, so... What happens when their timeout is finished? So they've had a 40-year timeout. What happens after the timeout?
Moses gives a huge long speech and then climbs up the mountain and dies.
No, then he looks at the promised land, but then he dies.
Yeah, and what mountain does he climb up?
Mount Sinai.
No, that's where he got the 10 Commandments. Mount, it's the same as a fish we know.
Salmon?
Mount Nemo.
Nemo.
Mount Nemo. I thought that was cool.
Mount
Nemo, the fishy Nemo.
Yeah.
Mount Nemo.
And so he climbs up and he looks at the promised land. He gives them a long speech. Just like when you guys are done timeout, you usually get a speech from mommy or daddy. Don't do that again. We give you guys a reminder on why you were in timeout.
No.
And what... No, we don't give you a speech. We got to give you more speeches at the end of timeout.
No.
Okay. What? This speech is a whole book in the Bible. What is this speech? What is this speech, guys? What book is the speech that Moses gives? What books are we discussing? We've talked about...
Numbers and Deuteronomy.
Well, we've already talked about Numbers, so what book is the speech? Sam, every time you bang, they hear it. So you can't bang. No banging on the table. Boys. Deuteronomy, ding, ding. So after 40 years in the desert, timeout, Moses had to retell the story. So he does that. He retells the story. Then he goes up a mountain, which we already discussed. You guys are further ahead on these questions. And then he does what?
He looks at
the promised land and... What's he do, Nathan?
climbs up a mountain
And dies.
and dies.
I like it when Ian says now he's really old and then he dies.
Yeah, that's what happens. We are all gonna die, even your mommy and daddy.
Now he's really old and mom.
Okay, so we're talking about the book, and Ian and Clive were asking, so if you curse your mom and dad, or you hit them, what happens? What would happen every time you hit mommy, Sam?
You die.
You'd have to be dead.
What?
So you glad we don't live in that anymore?
Yeah.
That was a pretty severe punishment, eh?
I would not like that.
No,
Except
well, you'd be
Clive?
dead, so.
But we wouldn't hit our mom and dad anyway.
Because the Israelites were living in a covenant, why were the punishments so severe?
I don't know.
Because the Israelites were living in a covenant, in return for God's blessings, they had to keep his commands, and they were hard to keep. This would show the nations around them how, what God is. Mr. Phil talked about it. Holy, which means full of holes, right?
No.
It means,
Set apart for God.
yeah.
Or from.
Okay, so are these severe punishments still in effect?
The cow.
Or were they just rules for the Israelites living under the old covenant? They were just rules for the Israelites living in the old covenant. That's why we don't have to kill you if you hit mommy or daddy. And don't worry, daddy would have been dead too because he probably hit his mommy and daddy too.
So you would have died?
Probably.
No. When you were never gonna get Daddy, if you were old and you hit your mom and daddy would die.
Are we supposed to be afraid of God?
No.
No. Kind of. We need to respect God and take him seriously.
Just like fire.
Yeah, and Dr. Schniffenhausen, he talked about the sun. The sun is an incredible thing. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. That's a good science class for in a few years. We don't know how the energy for the sun came into being. How did it come into being? Like scientifically we don't know, but when we look at God, how did it come into being?
God.
God spoke. What's a riverboat?
A riverboat is a humongous boat.
That goes on a river. Guys, when you knock your water bottles around like that, what happens? People in virtual Sunday school land hear it. So we got to be very quiet, okay?
What's virtual Sunday school?
They're going to listen to the recording. Think about it. Your cousins and Lucas and Theo and who else is normally in Sunday school?
Tony and Connie.
Yeah, and Mr. Troy. Ellie. They'll all hear you going bang, 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 and that's all they'll hear, really loud. So we got to be a little more quiet. What's a riverboat? A riverboat. See, in the United States, so just south of us, it actually starts not that far south, on the Milk River. We were almost there a couple weeks ago when we were in the big truck. That is actually part of the Mississippi.
What big truck?
I'll tell you later when we're in the big truck. So not very far south of here is actually part of the Mississippi River watershed. And the Americans have the big rivers down south, and they can put things on barges, and they had these big, before the railroads were really coming, and even now, they had big boats that would go up and down the Mississippi River and carry people and goods, just like our highways. So instead of having big 2-lane highways, they had river boats that go up and down and up and down and up and down. And that was a big part of what made the nation to the south of us very big.
Do you mean the semi-trucks?
Yeah, the river boats were like the semi-trucks of the day. So they looked like that. So that was a riverboat. And that was a pretty fun song. So we have a riverboat for you guys to color now. So that is all for virtual Sunday school this week. And next week, I think we're going to learn about, finally, the promised land.